Chapter 51. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 51. How he cares, wow, really? I said in awe. Yup. It's not as big of a deal as you think, but it does mean that I have to take care of his case along with the other doctors, Adrian said. I see. I mumbled. Adrian flashed me a smile before he started taking off his suit and, in its place, he put on his white doctor coat again. Welcome back, Dr. Adrian, I said to myself in my mind as I smiled at him. One day I'll get used to this transition of his, but not today. Soon, I found out that Adrian was right. I did recognize the politician immediately. He's the Minister of Foreign Affairs and is often seen on television during news segments. Dr. Adrian, thank you helping me out today, the man said with a friendly smile. It's always a pleasure to have you here at our hospital. How have you been feeling? Adrian asked with a look of genuine concern. Like usual. The treatment last time worked very well, the minister replied. Then let's do the usual monitoring tests to follow up from last time, Adrian suggested. Sure. Thank you, the minister readily agreed. This way please. I'll also have the same team of doctors assist you with the entire procedure. It's the same as last time, so there's nothing for you to worry about, Adrian reassured the man. Great, the minister said approvingly. Together with Adrian and the other doctors on the team, we walked from the lobby to private rooms for VVIP patients and then to test rooms where the machines necessary for the procedures were located. Apparently, the Minister of Foreign Affairs had a chronic lung condition that was treated before but needed monthly monitoring through tests and X-ray scans. By the time that we were done sending the minister back to his car in front of the hospital, my ankle felt quite sore, and it became challenging to put my weight on it when I walked. Not wanting to disturb Adrian or anyone else, I just sucked it up and tried to put my weight on my other leg instead. It would be time to go back home soon, and I can deal with it when I get home. I have some medicine gel that I could apply and that should suffice. After the minister rode away on his car and the other doctors had left to get on with their work, Adrian and I were the only ones left in the hospital's lobby. As I turned around to walk into the hospital, Adrian called after me. I felt his hand around my wrist as he stopped me from walking away. Wait, Elena. Adrian called out to me. Instinctively, I turned around to face him. Yes. I said, wondering what he wanted. Without replying to me, Adrian crouched down in front of me. My eyes widened at his sudden action and some people paused in their walk to see what was going on. What is he doing? Adrian. I called his name questioningly. What's been bothering you? Is it your feet or your ankle? Adrian asked without looking at me. His gaze was concentrated on my ankle as he reached out a hand and gently traced his fingertips around my right ankle. Could he tell? No, it's nothing. I quickly denied. So, you normally walk with limp? Adrian asked sarcastically as he looked up and smiled knowingly at me. No, I replied softly, feeling quite embarrassed that he had called me out. Then what is hurting? He asked again. My right ankle. I admitted softly. Since when? He asked immediately. Probably since the trolley incident this morning, I replied, not quite knowing why I was feeling so guilty in front of him. And you were walking all day in these heels? Adrian scolded me like I was a dumb kid. His worried face made a heart skip a beat. For some reason, it felt sort of nice to have someone worry about me so much like this. Excuse me, can you get me a wheelchair? Adrian turned to say to a nurse who happened to walk by at that moment. The nurse seemed confused at first, but she nodded and readily agreed to do so. Sorry, but I don't think that's necessary, I quickly told Adrian. You can't walk like this. You'll make it worse, he said firmly. It would be a little embarrassing to be wheeled along in a wheelchair though. My condition wasn't serious enough for that. Honestly, I could still walk by myself. I don't want a wheelchair. I mumbled. Sorry. There's no need for a wheelchair anymore. Thank you though. You can get back to work, Adrian quickly said to the nurse. She nodded at him with a confused look on her face. I was confused too at how quickly Adrian changed his mind since he seemed so insistent before. Adrian. I called his name quite loudly in my shock. It all happened so suddenly, and the next thing I knew he was carrying me princess-style in his arms. My mouth dropped open in shock. Wait. I protested immediately. This is even more embarrassing. Everyone was staring at us, and my dress wasn't designed to adequately cover my legs when I'm carried in this position. You're not taking another step in those heels until I get a proper look at your ankle. If you don't want the wheelchair, then I've got no other choice but to carry you, Adrian said as he started walking. But. I began protesting. No, buts. Adrian cut me off before I could say anything more. He took me to a private room and placed me on a chair. He got down on one knee and his hands were on my right ankle and foot as he started examining my ankle. Does it hurt when I move it like this? He asked as he glanced up at me. A little. I admitted. What about this? He asked. It hurts. I replied honestly. All right. It's probably just a sprain, but you did make it a lot worse by not getting it treated right away. No more walking in heels for you until this heals up properly, Adrian said authoritatively. To be continued. Chapter 52. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 52. Honorable Dream. His hand started applying some medicine on my sprained ankle before he started wrapping tape around my ankle. Thank you, Adrian, I thanked him after he was done. If it swells up, I'm going to get you to take medicine for it, he warned sternly as he got up. I'm sure it'll be fine soon, I said as I smiled up at him. Adrian looked down at me from where he was standing right in front of me before he sighed loudly. It was my first day working for him and I'm already causing him so much trouble and concern. You don't need to tend to me next time, you know. I know you're busy, so it's fine if you get the other doctors to do it. You should only treat VVIP patients, right? I said half teasingly and half seriously. Who says you're not a VVIP patient? He teased me back before he reached out a hand and placed it firmly on my shoulder. Am I as important as a minister now? I asked with a small laugh. You're way more important, Adrian replied. The serious tone in his voice and the way he looked directly at me made my heart skip a beat. My brain just died, and I couldn't come up with any smart responses to that at all. Why did you decide to become a doctor? I asked, trying to change the topic. Although, I was honestly curious to know more about him as well. To save lives. To take care of the sick and the weak, Adrian replied without needing to think. How honorable. I replied with widened eyes. I'm not living up to that dream of mine though, Adrian said, and for a split of a second, I think his face darkened. Don't say things like that. I said, trying to comfort him. I'm just like a doctor for show now, I don't take care of real serious cases anymore. As you can see, all I do is take care of VVIP patients that are necessary for business connections, Adrian said self-depreciatingly. I could tell right away that Adrian didn't like how things were, but I didn't dare comment on it. Afraid that I would offend him or say something insensitive, I decided to lighten the mood through a little joke instead. You did heal me for real twice now. I guess I fit in your definition of the sick and weak, right? I said before smiling brightly at him. I'll drive you home, Adrian said before he smiled back at me. That I don't think that's a good idea. It's okay, I drove here so. I refused his offer as I struggled to find words that wouldn't offend him. You can't drive with that ankle. I won't allow it, he said resolutely. Shit. I did put a no sleeping over condition in the contract. However, I didn't put a you can't drive me home condition in there. If I told him to drop me off at the intersection close to my place, he'll probably insist on driving me all the way because he didn't want me to walk. He also doesn't know that my building is so old and small that it doesn't even have an elevator. Now that I think about it, I probably can't walk up those flight of stairs with this sprained ankle. Sorry to bother you, but can you drop me off at Justin's place? I asked in a sweet voice. Sure. I'll do that, Adrian agreed. My ankle felt as good as new the next day, so the sprain probably wasn't that bad to begin with. It rarely hurt anymore, and I had Adrian to thank for that. Perhaps it was because of Adrian's medical attention that my ankle recovered so fast like magic. I looked at the high-heel shoes that I had planned to wear today before sighing loudly to myself. Recalling Adrian's disapproving face when he asked if I walked on high heels while my ankle was hurting gave me pause. I wasn't scheduled to see Adrian today, but it still made me feel quite guilty to wear high heels behind his back. In the end, I made a compromise and wore shoes with a very low heel. Today I was scheduled to work with Eros and his team. Truthfully, I wasn't looking forward to the first day on this job at all. From what I could tell, I was positive that it would be tough working with Eros and even more so with Sean. Whatever you do, don't sprain your ankle again. Seriously, I've never had a girl sprain her ankle on her first day at work since I opened up this agency, Justin teased me before laughing loudly. Shut up. I muttered in feigned annoyance. Adrian is such a gentleman, I swear. He patched you up and even drove you back. He's such an angel. Justin said while clasping his hands together and placing it on the side of his face. I'm off. Wish me luck. I hollered as I walked out the door of Justin's place. Let me introduce you to Eros's new assistant manager. As you know, Eros has been getting more work as of late and we expect him to get even busier in the near future. Miss Elena here will help out for a few days of the week. Please welcome her to the team and give her your support. The manager proudly introduced me to the other staff in Eros's team. I looked at the small crowd of people that were gathered around the manager and me. Honestly, I never knew that so many people worked behind the scenes to support just one man, even if he was a superstar. The team consisted of almost 20 people, and all fulfilled the various roles that were necessary to ensure that Eros's professional life ran smoothly. I'm Elena. It's an honor to join the team. I look forward to working with everyone here. Thank you so much for your support, I said before bowing slightly and smiling to the other team members. To be continued. Chapter 53. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 5-3. Call me assistant manager, welcome. Nice to meet you, welcome to the team. The atmosphere was very friendly and super hyped. The team members consisted of both genders and were varying in age. However, everyone seemed very enthusiastic to work together. It must be because of the hard work of these people supporting him that Eros is as famous and successful as he is today. Today was my first day on the job as Eros's assistant manager. As discussed prior to this was only a cover for my fake girlfriend relationship with Eros. The man in question was still nowhere to be seen. Thankfully, the manager would be with us as well. Mr. Mark Davis is a famous talent manager that had been working with Eros soon after he debuted with his band. The band's first album was such a huge success that the top manager was put in to further groom them and Eros in particular. Where is Eros? I asked the manager as I stood by his side. The other team members have scattered to work on their respective jobs, so the manager and I were the only two people left. He should be here any moment now, Mark replied as looked at his watch. As if perfectly in sync, Eros walked in through the door. If I had to take a wild guess at his favorite color, it would be black. Eros was dressed head to toe in black. From the cap he had on his head to the shoes he had on his feet. Eros, you're here just in time. Mark said, his voice flooded with relief. Naturally, Eros replied monotonously. Eros walked past the manager and me without even glancing our way. Thankfully, I wasn't expecting a warm welcome from him because I wasn't getting any of that. The manager looked at me and sighed softly before handing me a clipboard with what appeared to be a very detailed schedule of today clipped to it. Elena is here with us today. It's her first day and I've already introduced her to the other team members as your new assistant manager, Mark informed Eros politely. Eros sat on a sofa, leaning his chin in his hand, and it seemed like he wasn't paying Mark any attention at all. I was starting to wonder if this was normal. Since it was clear that Eros wasn't going to say anything in acknowledgement, Mark continued on. First, we'll start by reviewing your schedule for today. First up, you have a photo shoot with Mega.X brand for their new season product launch. Then you have an interview with Spotlight magazine followed by a radio interview at the 109 studio. Then we'll come back here where you'll discuss with your music producer for the production of your new single. That's it for today, Mark explained seriously. Wow, that's like so much to get done in one day. Will Eros really be alright working through all that? Let's go, Eros said before getting up from his seat. Just like when he had entered, he walked past us and out the door. I stared after him before glancing over at Mark. Honestly, I wasn't sure what I'm supposed to do. Eros didn't even register my existence, let alone talk to me. Is he always like that? I whispered to Mark. We all have our good days and our bad days, Mark replied before smiling a little at me. So he's having a bad day? I asked, feeling thankful that this wasn't the norm. No. For Eros, it's always a bad day, Mark replied with a chuckle as he stressed very much on the word always. In other words, this is how he normally is. Every day will be like this. What am I supposed to do exactly? I asked, feeling like all hope is lost. Just follow me for now. We can't be late, Mark said as he urged for me to walk and talk. On the way to the car, Mark explained that I will mainly just observe and stick close to Eros. I didn't have to do anything, but I also had to do everything to ensure that Eros's work goes smoothly. If he asks you to do something, just do it. If he encounters problem at work, you help him out. It's that simple, really. Mark explained before shrugging. Okay, I murmured half in understanding and half in confusion. Our job is to support him. Eros is a professional, so he always has his act together. He'll do great at whatever he does, and that's why he's managed to get so famous. For us, we will do everything to support him so that his work proceeds smoothly, Mark explained sternly. All right. I understand, I replied with a firm nod. Eros' team consisted of 2 large buses, and I could see the team members getting on after loading their tools and equipment. This way, Mark said as he gestured for me to follow him. Instead of heading to the bus along with the other team members, Mark led me to a car. Eros and us managers ride the car together. I usually drive for him. On days that I'm not here, you'll drive for him, Mark said as he gestured with his hand for me to get in the front passenger seat. I followed his instruction and got it. Eros was already seated in the back seat with his head thrown back and the black cap covering his face. I wasn't sure, but I had the feeling that he was already asleep. As Mark drove us to our first destination of the day, I couldn't help but wonder if the man sleeping at the back seat of the car right now was Eros or Sean. Eros's first job for the day was a photo shoot for Mega.X brand. We arrived at the studio on time and the Mega.X staff were already on standby to receive us. The staff bus arrived right after us and everyone got off at once. I'm Mark, Eros's manager, and this is Elena, his assistant manager. We look forward to working with you today, Mark said politely. To be continued. Chapter 54. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 54. Hot and cold superstar. I smiled professional and the Mega.X brand team members introduced themselves to us. At that moment, Eros got out of the car and came to stand by my side. I'm Eros. It's an honor to work as the face of your brand for this season. I am looking forward to working with everyone, Eros said kindly before beaming his superstar smile at everyone. The man standing next to me right now was clearly Eros in professional mode. He was friendly, humble, professional, and extremely charismatic. He was nothing like the taciturn man with the dark and depressing aura from before. It was like he had changed into a completely different person from the moment that he got out of the car. We look forward to working with you too, the head of the Mega.X team managed to say after stammering a couple of times. I guess Eros does have that impact on people. We were led inside the studio before Eros, Mark and I were led to Eros's dressing room. They'll dress him up for the shoot. We don't have to do anything. Just act pleasant and professional and watch. The director should come in to brief Eros before the shoot starts, Mark quickly explained to me. The dressing room was quite large considering that only one man was getting dressed up. Racks of clothes, accessories and shoes were lined up. I wondered how long it would take for Eros to get through modeling all of those. The hairdresser and makeup artist got to work on Eros at once after they exchanged a brief introduction. I knew that Eros had a very attractive and beautiful face before, but seeing the makeup artist worked on him, made me even more aware of how attractive he looks. His skin is so naturally flawless that a girl would get jealous of it. His natural blonde hair looks soft and shiny as the hairdresser started styling it to match the theme of the shoot. There were a few knocks on the door and a middle-aged man came in. He must be the director. Mark and I got up from where we were seated and greeted him immediately. Director Howard, it's an honor to work with you again, Mark said politely. Me too. I love working with Eros, the director replied before his eyes fell on me. I'm Elena. I'm Eros's assistant manager. It's a pleasure to meet you, I introduced myself before smiling at him. Wow! For a moment I thought we had another model on set. Howard said before he laughed loudly. I pretended that I was slightly shy at his comment because that was probably the reaction that he wanted to see. Honestly, being told that I looked like a model wasn't something new for me and I could live without any more unnecessary attention. The director pulled up a chair and sat next to Eros as he started briefing Eros on what he had to do during the photo shoot. It didn't take that long before the director was done, and he left. The photo shoot started sooner after when Eros was dressed and ready to do. I'll head there first with the team. Elena, you come along with Eros when he's done, Mark instructed before leaving the room. Suddenly, it was just me, Eros and the stylist left in the dressing room. I watched as the stylist adjusted Eros's outfit and added the final touches. We're done. All good to go. Just head to the shooting area when you're ready, the stylist told Eros before turning to smile at me. Thank you. I said to him politely as I bowed a little. The stylist was out the door before I could say any more, and just like that Eros and I were the only ones left in the dressing room. I should get him to move to the shooting area before things get awkward between us. Eros. If you're ready we should. I began saying before trailing off. Eros got up from his seat and headed straight for me. His golden eyes seemed to glow as he stared directly at me. It was the first time today that he looked directly at me. Instinctively, I took a few steps back until my back hit the wall. Don't get in my way. Just stand aside and don't get in anyone's way, Eros said coldly. Shocked at his direct words, I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Eros walked out the dressing room without saying anything more. I let out a long sigh before I collected myself and started walking after him to the shooting area. It wasn't like I ever intended to get in anyone's way. I wasn't a pro, but I could tell that Eros was extremely good at what he was doing. He also changed outfits very quickly. Eros followed the direction of the director and added in his own pose very smoothly that the shoot progressed well ahead of schedule. The director was thrilled at the photos that he was getting, and the photographer complimented Eros non-stop while he shot the photos. I did exactly as Eros told me to. I stood idly by to the side as I watched him work. Everyone seemed to have something to do except for me. It wasn't like a contract girlfriend had any role to play here. On top of that, no one here apart from the manager and Eros knew what I was really hired for. Mark spoke to the director as they both watched the photos on the screen of the monitor. Last outfit. Good job, Eros. Just one more set and we can wrap up, the director said while clapping his hands together. Glancing at my watch, I could tell that we were around 20 minutes ahead of schedule thanks to how effectively Eros and the team worked. Mark came over to my side and together we continued to watch Eros posing in front of the camera. He's good, isn't he? Mark commented. Yes. I replied in short. He can be very strict and it comes to work because he's very committed and professional about it. Don't let it get to your head, okay? Mark said comfortingly. I wondered if he could tell that I was feeling a little down from what Eros had said. That coupled with the fact that I felt so useless and out of place here. Of course. I replied vaguely. To be continued. Chapter 55. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 55 can't get enough of him. Just like the photo shoot, the magazine interview and the radio interview went by smoothly like a breeze. Eros received ample compliments from both clients, and they looked forward to working with him again. I was starting to see why Eros was so popular in the industry and why his schedule is always packed with jobs. Finally, we're heading back to the agency. Your music producer will be there to meet you when we get back. As I told you before, he wants to discuss your new single, Mark said as he kept his eyes on the road ahead. Eros seemed lost in a daze as he stared out at the scenery that was passing by through the car window. From the looks of it, I doubt that he actually saw anything that was passing by. I wondered if he was tired and then I thought that it would be extremely disturbing if he wasn't tired after all the things that he's done today. One thing that I've learned for sure is that Eros worked hard. His success wasn't from natural-born talent alone, it also came from his endless devotion and effort. Suddenly, Mark's phone started ringing. Mark sighed loudly before picking up the phone. I felt so sorry for Mark and how busy he was. What? Why are they there? Who leaked the info? Mark exclaimed loudly. Did something happen? The voice from the other end said something that I couldn't make out. I had my attention on what was going in the phone call while Eros's mind was still floating around in outer space. We'll be there soon. Please secure a safe entrance through the back. Thank you, Mark ordered authoritatively before ending the call. Is something the matter? I asked with worry. Someone leaked news that Eros is about to launch a new single. The press and the fans have gone crazy and have gathered in front of the agency building. We can't get in normally, Mark explained, sounding exhausted. What do we do? I asked. Eros, what do you want to do? Mark asked. We'll enter through the front. If the fans are here to see me, then we'll give them something worth their visit, Eros replied casually. That didn't match at all with what Mark just said through the phone. Weren't we going to enter secretly through the back? Roger that. Mark mumbled as he began calling someone on his phone. Eros seemed extremely at ease while I wondered if things will really turn out fine. Mark was busy talking on the phone, giving instructions on how to organize the mob in front of the building and the preparation of security teams. Eros. 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 The large crowd of people that surrounded the front of the agency building chanted his name on repeated. Although I was in the car, I could hear their shouts clearly. This really was like a scene straight out of entertainment news. There were so many fans here and almost all of them had photos of Eros or posters of his name in their hands. Eros put a pair of sunglasses on and started stretching in the back seat of the car. Mark was on the phone, giving last-minute instructions. As for me, I was busy scanning the crowd in awe as I read the fans' message to Eros on the signs that they held. So many confessions of love. Basically, I didn't know what to do and I wasn't very useful in the situation. What do we do when we get out of the car? I asked. Nothing much. Security will clear a path for us and keep the crowd from approaching Eros. We will walk along with him and make sure that no one comes close to him. When Eros reaches the podium that has been prepared in front of the entrance, he will answer some questions regarding his new single. That's it, Mark briefed quickly. Okay, did I see? I mumbled. Just act friendly to the fans but don't talk to them. Just smile, and if the fans are offering Eros a gift, you take it. Clear? Mark instructed. Yes, sir. I replied. Eros, you ready? Mark asked. L.C. Yeah. Eros replied with disinterest. The camera flashes were blinding, and I wished that I too had sunglasses on like Eros did. Eros stood and posed for the camera while the security guards were busy keeping the crowd at bay. Keep back, please. No pushing. Just as we discussed in the car, Eros began walking along the path prepared for us. The guards held the crowd back to keep the path clear. Eros waved and smiled to his fans as his fans went wild at his appearance. Everyone was shouting at once and it was absolute chaos. Many fans shoved gifts in through the lines of bodyguards, and I took as many as I could in my arms while smiling in appreciation and thanks to the fans. Flowers, plush dolls, letters, and other wrapped-up presents quickly filled my arms. Eros arrived at the podium, and after smiling and waving at the crowd, he began his mini speech. Mark and I stood to the side as we waited. Thank you everyone for always supporting me. It's a shame that you didn't first hear the news about my new single from me, but I am extremely happy to confirm that I will be launching my new single very soon. Eros addressed the crowd in a clear and captivating voice. The crowd that was so loud just now became completely silent as everyone listened to Eros and his words. Although I was new to all of this, I could tell that the fans genuinely cared and respected Eros. He continued with his speech and answered a couple of questions from the reporters. That's enough for today. So sorry, but Eros has to head back inside now, Mark spoke through the microphone sternly. That was the signal for Eros to bid farewell to his fans and head back inside. The crowd reverted back to cheering and chanting his name loudly as Eros walked in front of us into the building. Despite the hectic situation outside, the building was peaceful and Eros seemed surprisingly calm. To be continued. Chapter 56. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 56 Love Song. Finally, we arrived back at the agency and made our way up to Eros's designated floor. Being the top star of the agency, Eros had his own floor and rarely uses any facility with the other celebrities in the agency. He had his own dressing room, dance studio, recording studio, meeting rooms, living quarters, fitness, and the list goes on and on. Mark quickly led us to one of the meeting rooms on Eros's floor where the producer was already waiting for us. Eros hasn't said a word since we entered the building. His charismatic aura had been completely switched off. Are you sure it's okay to promise the fan about a new single when you haven't even started working on it? Mark asked with concern as we walked along. It's fine. I don't like to disappoint my fans, plus we're supposed to launch a single soon anyways. Eros replied passively. We entered the meeting room and a very thin man in baggy clothing was there waiting for us. He greeted everyone with a warm smile. So, this man is the producer. Eros. It's good to see you. How have you been? The man asked. He seemed to know Eros quite well. I guess that was how it's supposed to be since this man produced many of Eros's songs and albums before. Yo. What do you want today? Eros said as he sat down opposite the man at the meeting table. Mark and I took our seat next to Eros. The producer turned to open his bag before pulling out some paper and placed it on the table for Eros to see. Eros picked up the paper for a closer look. Maybe it was just my imagination, but I was certain that Eros's face darkened grimly as he narrowed his eyes at the contents of the paper. I couldn't help but wonder what he was seeing. What do you think? The producer asked. Impossible. Eros said as he placed the papers down on the table. What do you mean? The producer asked in shock. I reject this proposal. I don't want to release a love song, Eros said resolutely. Eros, we've been talking about this for a long time already. It's time for you to tap into a more mass market. The largest market for songs is the love song category, Mark quickly jumped in. No way. Of all the love songs you're asking for a lovey-dovey love song. Eros said with a disgusted look on his face. Calvin, what about darker love songs? Unrequited love or like breakup songs? Mark suggested as he tried to find some middle ground between the two. I'm looking for a slow and romantic love song that can show off Eros's voice without the blaring music in the background. I also want the song to be adaptable into an acoustic version as well, the producer stated without willing to back down. BVEC, it doesn't fit with my image. At all. Eros stated firmly. That's the thing, Eros is super popular now but we're struggling to grow your fanbase, the producer said. Well, isn't that because everyone knows about Eros already? He's very popular, Mark counter. Knowing a celebrity and being his hardcore fan, isn't the same thing. Surely you know that, Mark. We want Eros to have more hardcore fans because they are willing to pay more. They buy everything that we launch, and they never miss a concert. We need more of those people and the easiest way is to launch Eros into the romance genre of everything. Love songs, love movies, love dramas and everything else, Calvin proposed passionately. Mark was deep in thought and so was Eros. I had to say that what Calvin said was very convincing. It was obvious that the mainstream part of the industry was dominated by romantic content. Maybe that's the case but I'm not sure if Eros. Mark began saying before he glanced nervously at Eros. Ultimately, it was up to Eros to decide. I doubt Mark or anyone could force him to do anything that he didn't want. If I release a love song for my new single, will more people listen to it? Will more people get to know me? Eros asked. For the first time, Eros seemed interested in something, and it surprised me. I didn't think that Eros would care so much about his popularity. Absolutely. We can market the song a lot more given its genre as well, the producer confirmed with certainty. Okay. Let's do it, Eros said with renewed determination. Oh, yes. Best news ever. You will not regret this, trust me. Your fans will love it. Everyone will love it. Mark breathed a sigh of visible relief as the atmosphere in the room lighted slightly at Eros's affirmative decision. What are the next steps? Mark asked. Well, I assume Eros would want to work on the lyrics and composition himself as he always does but of course, my team and I are happy to help out if he wishes, Calvin replied. I'll contact you when I have something. Eros said. The next day, despite having a new song to write, Eros was swamped with work from early morning till evening. By the time we got back to the office, it was already dark, and the building was close to deserted. It was 8 p.m. and most office workers have already left for the day apart from some that were doing overtime. When we arrived at Eros's floor, I felt bone tired, and I prayed that this wasn't a sign of me getting old. Mark looked visibly tired as well but when I thought that the day was over, I was proved to be very wrong. I'm sorry to ask you for this but can you keep an eye on Eros while he thinks up some lyrics for his new single? I have a meeting to go to now with the management and someone needs to make sure that he starts writing those lyrics, Mark said sounding extremely apologetic. He must be referring to the love song that Eros is supposed to compose but does he expect Eros to work on it right now? To be continued. Chapter 57 You are listening at novelfull.audio. 57 Caught, right now? I asked. Yes. Unfortunately, being a celebrity doesn't have fixed working hours. Mark replied with sad smile. Okay. Sure. I murmured. You don't have to do anything much. Just watch him and keep him company. Make sure he doesn't slack off. See you. Mark said as he waved goodbye. After parting ways with Mark, I headed to the studio where Eros was. Eros was wrapped up in thought with a pen and a notebook in his hand when I entered the room. He didn't even look up, and I was certain that he wasn't even aware that I had walked into the room. I decided to remain silent and give him space so that he could focus on the lyrics that he was writing. I wondered what kind of love song Eros would come up with for his fans. Time ticked by as I sat there silently while Eros frowned at the papers in front of him. An hour passed by and then two. Eros was still busy working, so I guess it should be fine if I leave for a bit. The truth was, I needed to pee. Quietly, I got out of my seat and left the studio. Private time in the toilet after a tiring day is the best. I peed and washed my hands before checking out my reflection in the mirror. My hair was slightly messy and my makeup wasn't in its best condition anymore, but that is to be expected. There wasn't anyone I needed to impress at this time tonight, so it should be fine. I headed out of the female toilet, and I caught someone's movement in the corner of my eye. It could have been another staff member walking in the hallway who had just turned a corner, but my sense told me that that wasn't the case. I quickly took off after that person as my mind recalled having seen someone dressed like that before. I prayed that I would be wrong, but I knew that I was most certainly right. Eros. I called out to him questioningly as I caught up to the man. Now that I was up close, my suspicions were confirmed. I've seen this disguise before when I first ran into him, and if he's in a disguise then that can only mean one thing. He's sneaking out. Don't ignore me. Where are you going? I asked as I grabbed his arm firmly with my hands. You did not see me here, Eros replied emotionlessly. But I did see you. Go back to the studio, I demanded. At that moment, while I was pulling on his arm, we both heard the sound of people chatting coming our way. It must be the staffs who were still working here. Eros clicked his tongue in annoyance. Arg, that you're so annoying, Eros hissed near my ear. Eros, stop him, I called out his name before his hand covered my mouth. My eyes widened in shock as he wrapped his other arm around my waist and began pulling me after him through a door. The room was almost completely dark once the door closed. I could feel Eros's body pressed against my back and his warm breath close to my ear. His hand still covered my mouth, and I couldn't make a sound. The chatting voices from earlier got louder as the staffs came closer to where we were until finally their voices disappeared, signaling that they had passed this room. I felt Eros relaxing close to me when the staffs have left. I pulled his hand away from my mouth and turned to face him. This was clearly a déjà vu of what happened when we first met. Where are you going? I demanded to know. That's got nothing to do with you, he replied without a care. It has everything to do with me. It's my job to keep an eye on you and make sure that you compose the new single, I snapped. That's not my problem, he replied coldly. Where are you planning to go? You're planning to escape and skip out on work, right? I said accusingly. It's just like the manager told me. Eros, that is such a troublemaker. You just go back to the room, Eros said as he eased past me towards the door. You can't go outside. The crowd from earlier is still camping out there. Wait. Eros, where are you going? I cried out as I grabbed his arm once more to stop him. You really want to know, he asked. I was stunned at his words, and then his hands were on my arm. Instead of me pulling him back, he was now pulling me along with him. What is going on here? This clearly wasn't Eros's first time sneaking out of this building because he seemed to know his way around very well. We exited the building from the back exit, and no one noticed us. A few staff and guards walked by, but they didn't recognize Eros through his disguise. Eros acted completely naturally and no one suspected a thing. His hand around my wrist was tight and firm as he pulled me along with him. We should head back. Let me go. I cried out in a hushed whisper. Can't do that. If you go back, they'll know that I'm missing. Eros replied. He's right, but that's not the point. I let him drag me along with him like some kind of hostage. I had no idea where he was taking me as we continued walking along the sidewalk. Surprisingly, he stopped in front of a subway station. We're taking the subway. Eros, that you're taking the subway. You can't do that, I quickly protested. I do it all the time, he replied casually. All the time? I exclaimed in shock. Eros ignored me completely. People will recognize you. I hissed a warning. No, they won't. If you stop freaking out, no one will notice, Eros replied firmly. Eros yanked me after him down the escalator as he ignored all my warnings. Soon, I was riding a very packed subway train with my body literally pressed up against Eros's. To be continued. Chapter 58. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 58. Unrequited love. This is a disaster. I prayed that no one would recognize him. He had a mask on so half his face was covered, but still. If someone recognizes him here, we'll have no place to run. I wasn't sure if I should be thankful for the fact that the train was too packed for anyone to pay attention to anything else besides staying on your feet. Everyone was in a rush to get home, and no one paid us any special attention. Where are you taking me? I asked in a whisper. You'll see. Eros whispered into my ear after leaning his head down. Excuse me. Sorry, a couple pushed past us to get out of the train. L.rg. I let out a surprised cry when they bumped into me, pushing me forward towards Eros. I felt the warmth of his arm around my waist as he pulled me closer to him and held me there. I glanced up at him and he smirked down at me. He's definitely doing this on purpose. Our bodies were pressed tightly against each other and I could feel his body heat all along the front of my body. Slowly, his hand slipped down from my waist to my hips and my ass. Eros. I hissed as my eyes opened wide in shock. Stay still. There's a lot of people in here, Eros whispered as he wrapped his other arm around my body and pulled me hard against him. I couldn't struggle at all as I stood there in his embrace with the side of my face pressed on his chest. He's too close, I can hear his heartbeat as his smell filled my senses. He's so warm and his body is so hard and muscular. I felt hot and I wasn't sure if it was because the crowdedness of the train or because my body had started to react to being in close contact with his. When are we going to arrive at our stop? We're here, Eros finally announced that we had arrived at our stop. He helped me out of the crowded train. Apparently, this was a popular station because many people stepped out with us. I realized that the people who got off with us were mostly teenagers. They looked like high schoolers and university students. They were out so late, and I wondered what they came here for. I've never been to this area before either. Stop spacing out. Let's go, Eros said impatiently as he took my hand into his. He pulled me after him and I struggled to keep up with his long strides. I couldn't imagine what my life would be like if I had worn my regular high heels on that day. I looked down at Eros's larger hand that held mine with a mix of feelings that I couldn't quite understand. A short while later, Eros took a sharp turn, and we came to a very run-down building that was decorated with many lights. A large crowd of people were gathered in front of the building while some were queuing to get inside. What is this place? I whispered as my eyes took in the scene in front of me. A place where I can get some fresh new ideas. Eros replied before pulling me after him to join the line. He paid for our tickets, and we entered the building. The place was packed with people and there was a stage where a band was playing live. That was when I realized that this was an indie concert venue of sorts. Do you come here often? I shouted over the noise around us. Eros still held my hand, and I was standing right next to him, but I had to shout to make sure that he could hear me. Not really. Eros replied vaguely. Instead of shouting back, Eros had chosen to pull me closer to him before leaning his head down to talk next to my ear. My body trembled a little at his closeness, but I was sure that Eros didn't feel anything. His attention was on the band performing on the stage. The music was loud as the rock band continued playing their song. The singer's voice was energetic and very emotional. I thought that they were not bad. The next band came onto the stage and suddenly the loud rock music was replaced by a gentler and slower song. When the lead singer of the band started singing, I realized that she was singing a love song. The crowd applauded and I found myself clapping along with them in excitement. She had such a clear and sweet voice. The song, I figured, was a sad love song about unrequited love. It was about a girl who was secretly in love with a guy but unable to confess her feelings because she knew that he wasn't interested in her and she would be rejected. The way the singer sang it made it feel so sad and I truly started to sympathize for her. I was so focused on the performance that I didn't realize that Eros had pulled me back against him. Eros. I whispered his name as I felt his arms around my waist. He was hugging me loosely from behind as he rested his chin on top of my head. I turned slightly to see that his eyes were on the band although his arm around my waist tightened. My heart leapt in my chest as he continued to hug me to him. Shoo, he hushed up my protest. I tried to turn around in his arms, but he held me in place. By that time, I had lost all focus on the bittersweet love song that was being performed. All I could think about was how close his body is to mine, his body's warmth, and his smell. Eros. I called his name weakly. Do you like this song? He asked. I guess I do. I replied softly. His arm around me tightened as he pulled my body harder against him. He's pressing my body back into his and now I could feel his hot breath against the side of my neck. To be continued. Chapter 59. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 59. A Kiss for Show. Alternative rock love songs aren't bad, I guess. Eros whispered into my ear and my body trembled. BVEC. It felt like years had passed until the song came to an end. Eros let go of me and I breathed a long sigh of relief. Come this way, he said as he took my hand in his once again. He led me around and we ended up backstage. After walking through a narrow hallway, we entered a room. To my surprise, the band that had just sung the love song was there. I could remember the lead singer and her outfit quite well from just now. Wow! Max didn't think you could make it, the girl cried out in excitement when she saw Eros enter the room. I got here just in time for your performance. The song was great, Eros replied casually. Did she just call him Max? The girl was probably in late teens or early 20s and the way that she was beaming at Eros told me more than I needed to know about how she felt about him. She looks cute and with a lot of professional help, she might look passable in the higher circles. Right now, she's just that cute. And this is, the girl asked as she turned her attention to me with narrowed eyes. Relax girl, I'm not here to snag your guy. This is my friend, Elena. Elena, this is Sasha, Eros introduced me smoothly. Hi. Your performance was amazing, I quickly complimented her to extinguish any unnecessary fire. I tried adjusting some of the chords that you chose and some words in your lyrics. I hope you don't mind. Most of it is still pretty much like the original lyrics that you wrote though, the girl spoke to Eros with sparkling eyes. Her band members gathered around Eros as well as they reviewed some music scores and the lyrics together. If I understood correctly, Eros wrote the lyrics to the love song that this band performed just now. The way they worked with him while he's still in disguise made me wonder if they even knew who he really was. His real name is Sean, so if he's going with Max then there was a high probability that he's keeping his real identity hidden and also the fact that he is the famous superstar, Eros. I'll see you guys around, I want to check in with the other bands. Keep up the good work. Max said encouragingly before he gestured for me to follow him out of the room. You wrote the lyrics to that love song? I asked the moment we were alone in the narrow hallway. So, you were listening, Eros said instead of directly replying to my question. Of course, I was listening. So, you wrote it? I asked, still in disbelief. He didn't reply but I was certain that he did. Why would Eros have problems writing a love song for the producer if he could write love songs? I mean, he did write the lyrics of that whole song that the girls sang just now. That evening with Eros was full of surprises. I stood by him as he spent almost an hour talking backstage to the other bands. He didn't write any songs for them like he did for that girl, but he gave the bands a lot of advice from composition, dance to performance. It was like he was training them and educating them. Honestly, I never expected that Eros had this side to him. He's so casual and down to earth with everyone, and they all seem to take his advice to heart. When he was done, he held my hand and we started walking towards the station from the way that we came. There were many things that I wanted to say to him that I didn't know where to start. "I think what you did back there is very impressive," I said as glanced over at his face. "How so?" Eros asked like he truly didn't understand. "I don't know. You're like a music guru or coach or something." I tried to explain. I felt like Eros was thinking about something, but before he could give me a reply, a voice called out to him. "Max." "Oh, it's the girl from before." I turned my head slightly and saw Sasha happily running towards us from afar. She probably wants to speak to Eros and I'm probably in the way. "I should go," I told him softly. "Close your eyes," Eros whispered as he came closer to me. I was confused, but for some reason, I found myself doing exactly what he told me to. Just when my eyes closed, I felt his arm around my waist as he pulled me towards him. His hand held the back of my head and then the warmth of his lips were on mine. My eyes shot open in shock. The sight of his handsome face right in front of mine and the forceful pressure of his lips crushing against mine was enough confirmation for me. "Eros is kissing me. Why?" His arm around my waist pulled me closer to him as his kiss became more passionate and demanding. His tongue thrust it firmly into my mouth as our kiss quickly got wetter. He kissed me deeply, his tongue swirling around against my own as he tasted me. I whimpered into his kiss as he proceeded to change the angle of our kiss. Eros kissed me ardently over and over again until I was breathless. By that time, I had already forgotten about our lone spectator. I was breathless and panting by the time that he broke our kiss. My face and my entire body felt hot. My lips felt bruised from his aggressive kiss. I turned to see Sasha running away from us and I closed my eyes in slight guilt before letting out a depressed sigh. How did I get myself involved in this mess of his? Why did you do that? Is it because of that girl? I snapped at him as I demanded for answers. "Let's go," Eros said, completely ignoring me. "No. You listen. You know that she's in love with you, right?" I asked accusingly. To be continued. Chapter 60. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. 60 Talks of Love. So? Eros replied without a care. So, he knows. Why don't you talk to her properly? Even if you don't like her, you should still give her a proper answer, I said sternly. I hated to admit it, but I didn't want to see that girl get hurt this way. She's still too young to be disillusioned about love. I already did, he replied. Huh? I said, not understanding him at all. I said it all in that song. If she's too dumb to understand it, then that's her problem, that song. As in the song that he wrote for her performance. Unrequited love indeed. While I was standing there piecing the story together, Eros had already walked ahead of me. Why he wrote that song for her and her band. Eros. I called after him. He didn't slow down to wait for me at all. Why does he seem so mad when I'm the one who should be feeling mad? I had no idea what was going through his head. When I finally caught up to him, I was completely breathless and panting. We were standing on an overpass overlooking a large intersection close to the station. It was late and there were not a lot of people out and about anymore, and we were the only ones standing there side by side. I bet he doesn't know how much I struggled up the stairs to catch up to him here. Eros. I panted his name as I gripped the railing with my hand to steady myself. After a while of silence, Eros was the one who spoke up first. I wonder. If it's really necessary to write and sing about love for me to become even more famous, he said in wonder. His question caught me a little off guard. Was that what he had been worrying about? I guess there are many people who like love songs and romantic movies. Your songs will reach more people that way, I replied with what I thought. Are you one of them? He asked after turning to look directly at me. That I guess. I mumble softly. What do you like about love songs? He asked curiously. I'm not quite sure, but that I guess love is supposed to be an emotion that everyone can relate to. People yearn for love, right? I replied thoughtfully. You don't sound very convinced, Eros replied as his eyes narrowed at me. Well, for me. I'm not yearning for it, and I don't miss it, I stated truthfully. You're strange, he commented directly. And you're a pervert. I shot back. As if he wanted to agree with my accusation, Eros held my face in between his hands as he crushed his lips down on mine. His hands on my cheeks were warm and so was his lips on mine. He kissed me tenderly until I found myself moaning softly into his kisses. When the tip of his wet tongue probed my mouth, I parted my lips to grant him entry. Eros's tongue plunged into the depth of my mouth and danced around passionately with mine as our deep kiss warmed me to the core. I'm sorry for using you earlier. But I really did want to kiss you, Eros apologized and confessed all in one breath. He just did it. Again. He just kissed me. Before I could start complaining about it, his phone started to vibrate, and Eros took a look at the screen. I had a good guess about who was calling. You should take that. Mark's probably worried sick, I said. No way. He'll burst my eardrums, Eros replied without hesitation. With a mischievous grin he showed me his phone screen, which showed around 50 missed calls from Mark. I took out my phone and found that I had a similar number of missed calls from Mark too. Being too wrapped up in the concert and spending time with Eros in general, I didn't take my phone out of my handbag to check. We looked at each other and burst out laughing. It was the first time that I saw Eros laughing and truly enjoying himself. I stood in front of the headquarters skyscraper that was home to Brandon's Renix empire. The sun is too bright today honestly, and the dress and suit that I had on was too tight around my chest area. Did my boobs grow bigger, or did I get fatter? Justin had taken money out of this case's budget to get a dress and matching suit tailored for me to make a good first impression for my first day working for Brandon. Due to my own laziness, I had used the old measurements from one of my tailors instead of dropping by to get my body measured. This overly tight dress was the result of that. I breathed out and prayed that I would survive the day without fainting. The sound of my phone ringing snapped me out of my thoughts. Glancing down at my phone screen, I wasn't surprised to see Brandon's name. With a soft sigh, I connected the line. Where are you? Brandon's demanding voice spoke through the phone. If I wasn't standing right in front of his building, I'd probably be in deep trouble right now. Brandon was very serious and disciplined about being on time. It wasn't like I was late, but within a few minutes I would be. I'm standing right in front of your building, I replied. Why are you standing there? Come inside. I'm already waiting for you in the lobby, Brandon said with a hint of irritation in his voice. I rolled my eyes at his authoritative tone before I knew that I wouldn't get a chance to do so for the entire day today. My heels clicked on the steps of the building as I walked up the few steps leading to the building's entrance. The lobby was luxurious with a very modern vibe as expected of a leading technology company. The name and logo of Renix was proudly displayed on the wall inside. To be continued.